I'm Sandy Botkin, CPA, tax attorney, and former trainer of IRS attorneys nationwide. Let's talk about a home office. You know, you probably heard, oh, if I claim a home office, I'll get audited and it's not really worth it. Did you hear that? Well, I'm here to tell you that if you're eligible and you don't take a home office deduction, you are crazy because it is worth thousands. In fact, when I ran the numbers, I found that a home office deduction for a relatively cheap home is worth somewhere around, with all the deductions taken into account, about $3,000 a year in cash. That's in cash. If you invest that at 6% over a 5-year period, that's worth about $15,000 in cash in your pocket every 5 years. If you don't think that's worth it, something's wrong. So, how do you claim a home office deduction? What are the rules? There are essentially 3 sets of rules. The first rule is you must use an exclusive portion of a room for business. Now, it doesn't have to be a whole room. A lot of people think it has to be a whole room. That's not true. It's got to be an exclusive portion of a home. It has to have a separate identifiable area, which means get those cookbooks out of the bookshelf where the home office is. Get those bridge books out of the bookshelf. That's the important point. Secondly, and by the way, people ask me when I talk about exclusive, you know, will IRS really come over to my home and see that I use it exclusively for business? Yes, they will. They will come over and check every now and then. They could. And so that's why when exclusive means exclusive. Now, how do you prove you're using a room exclusively for business? You take a picture. Take a picture of the home office. Take a picture of the furniture to show that it's used exclusively for business. Date the photograph, but do not send the photograph into IRS. So you keep the photograph in case you get audited. Secondly, you've got to show that you're working in your home regularly for business. Now, regular usage means approximately 10 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. It's much more important to use it regularly than, say, 2 hours this week and 14 hours next week and so on. Thirdly, your home has to be the principal place of business for your business. Now, what does that mean? Well, this actually started with a Supreme Court decision by the name of Solomon. Doc Solomon actually was not far from me. He lived in Fairfax, Virginia, and he was an anesthesiologist. And he maintained a home office for purposes of doing most things because the hospitals did not provide him an office. He read his radiological reports at home. He sent his patients his bills from his home. He did his continuing education from his home. Well, he tried to claim a home office deduction because he had a set room where he did this. The tax court, the IRS didn't allow that, and they went to the tax court. And the tax court said, Dr. Solomon, you're right. The IRS didn't like that, and they went to the appellate court. The appellate court said, Dr. Solomon, you're right. The IRS didn't like that, and they went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, Dr. Solomon, you're wrong. IRS, you're wrong. You're being too liberal. You almost think these justices are paid by the government. They are. What the Supreme Court said was, if you do your most important functions for your business, that is what determines your principal place of business. Well, Dr. Solomon then responded and said, well, if that's the case, I win. The justices said, oh, why? He said, well, I do my most important function at home because that's where I send all my patients my bills. Justices said, well, figures a doctor would say that. No, you're an anesthesiologist. Your principal place of business is where you deliver anesthesia, which is obviously the hospital. His wife tried to argue that he delivered it at home as well, but that didn't go over well. So the bottom line is, because he didn't do his most important functions at home, he was not entitled to a home office deduction. Supreme Court then said, Dr. Solomon, you're out. We know where you do your most important functions with the hospital, so you're not eligible. But there are a lot of businesses where you do a lot of, where you might have important functions in multiple locations, particularly, say, if you're in sales. You might have important functions in your car. You might have important functions in your home. So in that case, if you have multiple places where you do important functions, they adopted a time test. And the time test works like this. If there's no one place where you do your most important functions, then take the amount of time you work in a week. If more than half of that time is physically worked at home, then you qualify as your principal place of business. And by the way, this is where Taxbot comes in real handy because you can keep track of where you're working. Now, obviously, this is a bad test because for many people, they don't meet the Solomon decision. Consultants, plumbers, a lot of people don't meet the deduction under Solomon. So Congress liberalized the rules in 1999. And the way they did that, and this is ideal for those of you who are home-based business people, they really helped you out. If you meet two tests, you don't have to worry about Solomon and your house qualifies for your principal place of business. So what are those two tests? Test one is you've got to do the management for your business from your home. In other words, you do the administrative paperwork from your home, which is almost always the case for home-based businesses. And the second test is you don't have another office where you do significant administrative work. Sales work is okay, but administrative work isn't. Administrative work would be things like filling out your Taxbot, or studying for your continuing education, or doing other types of administrative paperwork. As long as your administrative work is done from your home, which is your management, and you don't have another office where you do a lot of significant administrative work, which is probably the case for most of you who are watching who have home-based businesses, you do qualify as a principal place of business. And as long as you use an exclusive part of your home regularly for that business, you're in good shape to be able to claim a home office deduction, which I'm telling you is worth thousands. Now, one thing about a home office that I want to mention, the home office deduction is the only deduction, it's a little weird, that's limited to your net income from your business. So let's take an example. Let's say you're a distributor, you make $50,000 a year, or you're a trainer, whatever, and you take all these other deductions that we mentioned in the videos, so your net income is $2,000. Your home office deduction then would be limited to $2,000, the net income. You still take the deduction. In fact, even if it has a loss, you still take the deduction. Why? Because the deduction gets carried over forever. And as you start making more money from your business, you can use that carried over deduction. Or if you sell your home, you can offset that with the carried over deduction. So you still claim it if you're eligible. And that certainly will make your life less taxing.